All right, and good evening, and welcome to the North Florida Blitz here on FloydHSFootball.com and the FloydHSFootball.com social media platforms. As you saw, like in the last show, I'm flying solo tonight. Marty Pallman is under the weather, and we hope he gets better as soon as possible. So we have him back next week here on the shows here on the North Florida Blitz, and of course the South Florida Blitz, and all the other shows that we do here on FloydHSFootball.com. Appreciate you joining us here, wherever you're watching us here from, on Facebook, Twitter, X as they call it, especially YouTube, and I'm going to hype that up here a little bit here. As we are closing in, we need to hit 1,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed to us yet on YouTube, go to Florida HS Football on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. As soon as we can get to hit to 1,000 viewers, we are going to be able to hopefully open up some new things, some new opportunities that YouTube is offering content creators. And we definitely would love to have that here with everybody. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube, go to youtube.com/FloydHSFootball and hit that subscribe button, and also hit that notification bell. You can also get that with that notification bell. When you hit it, you will be able to get updates of when we go live or when we post new content with videos on YouTube. So definitely, subscribe on YouTube, but also, follow us on the other social media platforms. That is at Florida HS Football on the social media platforms that we have, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube, and also on Twitter at FLA HS Football. So I'm already seeing a couple of comments already, and Noli Scandulis, he's like, I'm working, it's driving me crazy. I missed yesterday's show and the fireworks that came along. Well, thanks for everything you guys do. Appreciate it, Noli. And we're definitely glad you're watching us here tonight here on the North Florida Blitz. And definitely appreciate everybody joining us here. And we're going to get things rolling here in just a second here. And as we get ready to do that, yes, it is time for the Blitz lines here on the North Florida Blitz. And this one, I got a couple of messages about, but the schools issued statements. Both teams issued statements. Reigns beat Bowles in a contentious rematch. Obviously, Bowles beat Reigns last year in the regional final to move on to the state semifinals, but Reigns picks up the victory this time around there at Skinner Barco Stadium there in Jacksonville. But then there was some contentions going back and forth between both teams, and there was even one video that showed that when the time for the handshake for the coin toss, Bowles extended their arms out, but Reigns didn't shake hands. But both coaches on both sides addressed the issue of the contentious matchup, and they addressed everything. And I feel like that's, in the end of the day, both teams addressing this. That was good sportsmanship on their part to address the issue that happened. That was, we know that, some people say it was not good sportsmanship, and we recognize that. But for both Reigns and Bowles addressing that, hats off to them on that one. But Reigns 1-0 on the season, Bowles 0-1, and Bowles they got a matchup this week, a big matchup against Trinity Christian, which we will talk about later on in the show here. And with that, but so the Bulldogs. Now 0-1 on the season after their state semifinal appearance last year. But let's go down the road, down US 301 out of Jacksonville, head towards Gainesville, and talk about Buchholz rolling over Vanguard and Mark Whittemore's return as the head coach of the Buchholz Bobcats. Obviously 7-2 during in the preseason game at Spruce Creek, but Buchholz looked much, much better here in terms of the game against Vanguard. And obviously the Bobcats, hey, want to know? I mean, it doesn't look like Mark Whittemore missed a step there or skipped a beat there and everything. And now the Bobcats are heading down to Vero Beach. Obviously, saw on the South Florida Blitz. If you watched that, we had the Buchholz Vero Beach game, and Marty took in the Vero Beach Indians in that game. I'm taking Buchholz to get the road victory there. So if you want to go back, go on youtube.com and /FloridaHSFootball and find the Gulf Coast Blitz. You can watch that there after we get done here tonight here on the North Florida Blitz if you missed it in the last hour. All right, with Buchholz winning, that is huge right there. We're going to roll on to how about Chiefland knocking off Williston? Hello, Indians. Yes, the Chiefland Indians beating Williston to open up the season. That was a huge win, and I'll tell you this, with the 4HS Football.com sports media rankings, which we'll post here after the show, which they're pretty much ready to go. Looking at everything that we have with the rankings, I can tell you that Chiefland got a lot of love this week. So that will be an indicator when you see that come out in the world classification. Chiefland picking up that win against Williston. That is huge. With Adam Gore starting his third stint as the head coach of the Indians, that is a big win to start off the season, especially against a coach that is very well known in Robbie Pruitt. To beat Robbie Pruitt, that's huge. So we will say that is a big deal. All right, next up, and we got the comments already flying off on the chat here about Niceville. Niceville holds out South Sumter 35-28 in a big game there at Eagle Stadium in Niceville. On Joe Settle is already throwing out the comments here, and he's like thinking that it could be the best team since 1988. And 1988 was the one and only time that Niceville has won a state championship. Niceville has played in a couple other state championships along the way, but Dynasty won state title and right there. And we'll see if this Niceville team does match up to what the 1988 team is all about. So we definitely appreciate it. And hey, Nolly, I appreciate you. It's throwing out there for everybody for the chat with the link and stuff. But yes, definitely find us on YouTube and hit that subscribe button, because the more subscribers we have, the better off we're going to be, and the better we can do, and more content we can create for all of y'all. So we definitely said that. So. All right. I waited. I waited here for you not even talk about football with them Reigns Vikings. Dang. Well, hey, it's a great win for Reigns. I'm going to pop that up here before I go any further. Hey, great win for Reigns. The thing is that we all know there was some contention, and I saw that on social media. I saw it both sides. Hey, and I want to address that. I wanted to address that part, but hey, Reigns. TJ Cole. I will say that TJ Cole definitely had a huge game, and definitely a quarterback to keep an eye on there in Duval County and Northeast Florida for this year. All right, moving along here. How about this? Bradford and Baker County having a slobber knocker of a defensive slobber knocker, I should say, and it was 13-0 Bradford until about less than 2 minutes with the game. In the game that was left, and Baker County got their 7 points. But outside of that, Bradford pretty much had control of that game against the Wildcats. And now this week, the Tornadoes have Dunellen on the schedule here this week, and that we will be talking about that game coming up here as well later on in the show, because that'll be a big game with Dunellen getting a big win over Florida High this week, which we'll talk about coming up here in just a couple minutes. But Pensacola Catholic 33-0 over Navarre. Navarre, Irish Bill texted me, and he just I'm not going to read verbatim of the text or anything, but he just explained some concerns that he saw after this game. And honestly, seeing that game and looking at the numbers, Navarre is in serious trouble this year. You can't even put up a point against Pensacola Catholic. That's some serious trouble, and they got Choctawed this week, and Navarre is going to struggle here a little bit. So. And yes, Joe, as we mentioned, Navarre is rebuilding. We get that, yes. And I think that, honestly, to me, in this situation, I get it, they're rebuilding, but I also know that, you got to be able to score some points. You got to be able to give these guys some confidence, because if you don't give them any confidence, what's going to happen is that it's going to be there's going to be a few issues along the way, and people are going to not be happy. I get that. And Navarre's been this team that has been there, in the conversation in the playoff hunt over the last decade. And when Jay Walls left, I know things have changed, and that's we're seeing that here so far early on. But yes, Navarre rebuilding, that is definitely something there. All right, moving on. Matt Brunson returning to Baker and getting a big win over FAMU DRS to start. It just seems like Brunson has not skipped a beat there with the Baker Gators, and 34-6 over FAMU DRS. That's huge right there. And with that said, the Gators now They were ranked coming into the in our poll last week. I won't actually verify. I've got the rankings here, and they will thing, but they were getting votes for this week, which we'll see that they're coming up here when that poll is released. But yes, Baker was ranked tied for ninth last week in our rankings, and with that win 34-6 over FAMU DRS, that was huge right there for the Baker Gators. All right, a couple other ones right here as we roll along here in terms of our rundown here. Dunellen beating Florida High. That was a huge win right there. Regional finalists last year for Florida High. Dunellen definitely looking really strong. And in Taylor County, upsetting Fort White in overtime. That's two huge games right there. And Fort White getting upset by Taylor County. Taylor County, new coaching staff rebuilding there. It's going to be huge. So, yes. And Justin Floyd brings up about it. We'll bring it up here in a moment, but about Choctaw. But, yes. And what's going on with North Florida Christian? Ooh, man. Oh, man. Chipley, 46-0 over North Florida Christian. What's going on? New coaching staff, obviously, at NFC, but this is uncharacteristic of North Florida Christian. This is not typical North Florida Christian. And honestly, if this continues, North Florida Christian could miss the playoffs for the first time in quite a while. And that would be huge right there for the Eagles to miss out on the playoffs, considering that they are a perennial playoff team, especially coming from the Big Bend area. So that's what's going on right there. And couple other things. Stephen Thatch says Catholic has a state championship team this year. Tough first game for a young Navarre team, but they will be more competitive this weekend. And yeah, I mean, you can say that. I mean, that's huge right there. And then Choctaw had a great win too. Yes, Choctaw, Justin Floyd definitely had a great win. Got a great win over a really good Gulf Shores, Alabama team. So Frank Beasley got those Indians rolling again. So we'll see. Regional finalists the past 2 years. We'll see if Choctaw can make a run even further this year to the state semifinals here in 2024. All right. With that said, we're going to take our first of two water breaks, and then we've got Noah Ram from the Gainesville Sun. He's on deck, and we'll talk North Central Florida football here with Noah Ram from the Gainesville Sun. We'll be right back right after this here on the North Florida Blitz. All right, welcome back here on the North Florida Blitz here, and We got Noah Ram from the Gainesville Sun joining us here. Tried to get him on last week. A couple things kind of happened there, but we got him this week. Noah, definitely appreciate you taking your time. I know it's a busy schedule there, not just football, but I know girls volleyball and a couple other sports with the fall sports season going on. And no, I mean, let's kind of just get right into it here. And I know for your coverage area, the biggest team that everybody has been talking about, obviously for the last few years, and obviously starting again this year, is Buchholz. And I mean, Buchholz is definitely, taking they just keep doing what they do best, is winning football games. And Mark Whittemore being back, that was huge. And honestly, when you found out the news that Mark Whittemore was returning, what was that to you when you heard that? You considering his history with the Bobcats, and now that he's now 1-0 on the season.
Stunning.
Stunning. Okay. That's a good answer.
More than just that. No, I mean, it was surprising to see him come back, especially since, before I'd gotten here, but from everything I'd heard, when he had stepped down after the 22 season, it was viewed as a retirement, genuine retirement. He'd coached for many years. His son Creed was going to be heading off to, Mr. Florida that year, was going to be heading off to Mississippi State. So it was definitely a little bit surprising to see him come back. But I mean, he is seeing them being on the sidelines for them in their game, their week 1 win in Vanguard last week. It's clear, obviously, his passion is still there. His enthusiasm is still there. And I think it just leads to a really good mix, because he's not, obviously he's a great coach, but this isn't a situation where you have someone, he's an OC and a coach, or a DC and a coach. He is just the head coach. They got Travis McGriff, the former UF receiver, whose son now is a receiver there, Keel, transferred from Newberry. He's offensive coordinator. Chuck Bell, who had been the coach last year, who was also serving as DC. He's now just DC defensive coordinator. So just seeing them on the sidelines, it's like they were already, known for great coaching, just being very professional operation. And that's even more so now, because every person seems to be at their role. And I mean, so they lost a lot of guys last season from last season's team, but, at the very least, they're going to be sound. They're going to be, again, they're going to be well coached, and, they still got a lot of talent on their team this season.
No, absolutely. And and they got a big road game this week going down to Vero Beach. But Buchholz, knowing to set the schedule tough each and every year, and this year's schedule definitely tough, and especially with their district. I mean, they got a good competitive district this year, and in the thought of after that game last week, because I know you were at that game against Vanguard, and I know that was huge. But Vanguard kind of looked like they've they lost pretty hugely against Miami Central in the preseason, and then you take a loss against Buchholz. I mean, does Vanguard look, in your opinion, look like they're taking a step back, compared to that state semifinalist they were last year?
Oh yeah. I mean, I will give this disclaimer. Obviously, Vanguard is not directly in my coverage area, but keeping an eye on them. They came up to Gainesville last season to play Buchholz at Citizens Field, and it's just a complete different team. I mean, again, 24-7 final score. It doesn't appear dominant, but it really was a dominant Buchholz performance. I mean, Buchholz, and I think, Coach Whittemore would be the first to agree, to say this, didn't fully play up to their potential in Friday's game. It was a lot of teams don't do in week 1. And you could say Vanguard, Vanguard in November might look, or in October might look totally different than they do right now. Week 1 is such an odd week. So, but no, they looked, they obviously lost Fred Gaskin, who, while he wasn't a quarterback by nature, you're still looking at someone who was a South Florida commit. He's still, a really talented athlete. And to lose someone like him is a tough loss. They lost, I think, their top 7 receivers from last season. I mean, you're talking about massive roster turnover. And, you have these programs, Vanguard's one of them, where we expect them to be good every year. And again, Vanguard very well might right the ship. They're still probably the best team in their district. But, there's growing pains that come with this. There's growing pains, not just for, right before I came on here, you talked about North Florida Christian, these schools that, they lose a lot of talent. It's just like, and, some coaches, it's hard to, you're not in week 1, they're not going to come out like gangbusters. So, I think that can definitely be said for Vanguard. And I think, again, that can be said even to an extent for Buchholz. While they won, performances like that, you mentioned their schedule, performances like that, not just this week at Vero, but, they got games against Manatee, who had a big win this past week. They got games And obviously in their district against Bartram Trail, they play Cardinal Newman later in the season. Really talented teams, home and away. And they're going to need to play better performances like that. But I think they will. I think the thing that was most impressive for Buoltz is that it was their defense that shined, and that was the unit that lost so many key pieces. I mean, Kendall Jackson, Miles Graham, 2 SEC commits, both gone. Matthew Cade is a UF walk-on. A lot of really talented players they lost. And the defense looked just as dominant, on Friday as it did in any game last season, which I think is really saying something given, again, how much talent they lost.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to transition to another team in the city of Gainesville here, and that is GHS, Gainesville High. I mean, they got a big win over Braden River, and they needed that. After being 1-9 last year, where their only win came against Santa Fe, I mean, to get a huge win over Braden River, that gives these guys confidence. And for Ian Scott, what does that say for his program? A team that at one point, just a little over a decade ago, was a playoff contender and actually playing for a state championship.
A team that 3 years ago won a district title.
Under Doc Pollard, yes,
right, and beat St. Augustine. So yeah, they really needed this. Again, is Braden River, I think they've gone through, I think this is their third head coach since January. Like, they had a lot of turmoil. They're obviously not, the strongest team in the world, but it is clearly a vastly improved GHS team. They got in a lot of key transfers. They're kind of, Ian Scott, Coach Scott is just kind of, you can tell he's mixing around. They have a quarterback right now who hasn't played football in years, and I don't even know if he's ever played quarterback. But they got a lot of pieces. And again, are they going to be a team necessarily that's going to make noise in the playoffs? I don't know about that. They need to prove a lot more. But I mean, they got Santa Fe this week. You said that was their one win last year. So I mean, if they can win that, I mean, just to be 2-0, to have more wins, this season they've had, already 2 weeks in than they had anything, either of the last 2 seasons would be beyond impressive. And I think they're building something really good there. I talked to Coach Scott after the game on Friday, and he said it. I mean, he had every, and I put this in my story, he had every right to be satisfied. I mean, their one win again last year was over Santa Fe. This was a dominant performance, against a team that beat them last season. And he said it. He was like, there's 9 more to go. Like, nobody's going to remember this, no one might remember this result in October, November. So there's a lot more ball left during the season, but I think that's good. I think he's got the right mindset for the team. And yeah, I think that they can make some noise. Again, they got a tough district. They got to play Vanguard. They got to play Leesburg, a couple of teams, playoff teams from last season, which will be tough. And then it's obviously tough, out of district games. They obviously play Buchholz, the city rival. So it'll be difficult, but I think that they could make some noise season. Again, maybe not in the playoffs, but for a program that's had 1 win over the last 2 years, even a 4 or 5 win season would be, just huge for the program and huge for the development of the team.
No, absolutely. No. And we're going to go into more of the rural schools now. Obviously, we've got the, Hawthorne obviously is still out there, but I think the biggest thing that we saw last week was Chiefland Adam Gore in his, third stint, starting year 1 of that third stint, takes on Williston and knocks him off. And, everybody had Williston pegged to win that game. And now here it's all of a sudden, now we're talking about Chiefland being saying, hey, well, wait a second. Hey, we don't forget about us out here out there in P County. And now Chiefland's in the mix of the talk again.
Yeah. And that really, I mean, I'll talk about that game, and then I want to talk about how that just really shakes up 1R. I mean, with Fort White losing, which I know you mentioned before I came on, but Chiefland, obviously they're a pretty strong team historically. And I think they proved that last year was just a little bit of a down year. They had a lot, they had a lot of injuries, but I mean, they still had, Austin Jones, who's one of the best running backs in 1R, and honestly in the state. I mean, he puts up numbers, with Keenan Johnson at Hawthorne, Caleb Woods at Newberry, and he didn't get nearly as much attention last year just because, Chiefland didn't have the team success. But, and I think with Williston, it's tough. Again, on that note, they lost a lot of guys from last season. I mean, they lost Shuby Coleman, at quarterback. They lost, some key pieces on their offensive line. It's tough to recover from that. It's tough to recover. So I think, I wouldn't say that Williston is totally done and you can write them off, but it was certainly a stunner. I mean, this is a team that I think hadn't lost since Robbie Pruitt had taken over before the 22 season, hadn't lost a regular season game. And last season, 22, they had an easier schedule and then lost in the playoffs. But last season, they had a really tough schedule. They challenged themselves and were really, really good. And for my money, they were, second, maybe third if you want to throw in Madison County. But the second or third best team in 1R, they just happened to run into in the regional final. They ran into Hawthorne, who was the best team. But they're clearly not the same this year. But, the point is with 1R, it's like, Hawthorne's obviously Hawthorne. But, I mean, they lost a lot of guys, and they have a big game this weekend against Newberry. But they lost a lot of guys. Union County was playing against Yulee, a bigger school, but they had to eke out a comeback win. Mentioned Fort White lost. We thought in 1R it would be, it looked like it was going to be Hawthorne, Fort White, Union County, Williston, and, Hawthorne being one, and then 2, 3, 4, someone in that order, and then a drop off. Now after Hawthorne, it just seems like it's wide open at this point, about who can really be the one to challenge them. And then obviously Madison County as well. But in the area, those were kind of the 4 teams. And now after Hawthorne, it's just, pretty wide open right now, it appears.
No, absolutely, Noah. And, you mentioned Newberry, and that's a team that I want to mention here because Newberry dominated University Christian here. And, I'm going to, it's a game that we're going to, me and Marty had for our picks this week. And, some people, I know you like mentioned Hawthorne lost a lot of guys, CJ Ingram, he's not playing this year. So that's another big key factor there. But Newberry, I mean, several Division I athletes on that team. And I think that's a big difference there this year when we start to look at comparing what these two teams look like. And I got a feeling that, in my opinion, I feel like Newberry has a chance to beat Hawthorne this year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think Hawthorne benefits from one regard that the game is still early in the season, because if you look at the box score I wasn't at the Newberry game on Friday, but if you look at the box score of the game against University Christian, their new quarterback this year, Colin Dunmore, Buchholz transfer, his numbers weren't that impressive. It was like 7 of 23 or something, and they still put up 44 points against a good University Christian team, which goes to show if at quarterback, if they could start to get, if Dunmore gets better as the season goes on, I mean, who knows? I mean, again, they got, Caleb Woods at running back, as a junior. He's got D1 offers. You mentioned, two Power 5 guys, and, Mekhi Newton is a Miami commit. Jaquez Carter is obviously a Ohio State commit and had his choice of Power 5 schools or Power 4 schools. So, I think that if they could get some steady play under quarterback, under center quarterback, they could really make some noise. And when it comes to the game this week against Hawthorne, again, it'll be tough. Hawthorne, they beat Anclot 51-0. Not the toughest competition.
The Anclot being one of the weakest teams, one of the teams that have struggled recently in the state.
But still, 51-0. And I mean, again, they lost a lot of guys. I mean, they lost their top 3 receivers. They lost, Andrew Zock on defense, who was a Navy commit. They lost a lot of key pieces. And obviously CJ Ingram's was the big one, and he's still, a student, but again, is not playing football this season to focus on basketball. But at quarterback, they still have Adrian Curtis there, who was at Eastside, PK Young, and then at Eastside. He's a really good quarterback, and I think, could reach new levels this season in Hawthorne's system. And they're always going to find people. It's like that's the thing with Hawthorne is they have, like with other teams in the state, they have gained the level of respect at this point where we just have to expect they're always going to be strong. They're always going to be strong. But that being said, if there's any time that Newberry can upset them, last season they played twice in the regular season, then in the playoffs, and Hawthorne ran away both times. And both of those games was like, can Newberry do it this time? Hawthorne killed them both times, as you know, Josh. So, for if they can't do it this year, and the game isn't Hawthorne, but still, if they can't do it this year, who knows when they'll be able to, in the next few years. But I think they got a shot. It's hard for me to pick against Hawthorne. It's hard for me to do
I know it's hard to pick against Hawthorne. I get that. I get that. But I do want to note, when looking at the box score from Newberry last week, 63 total tackles between the team. I mean, 9 tackles for loss, and they had 5 interceptions. And I mean, That's some staggering numbers when we talk about the defensive side of the ball. And as they say, defense can win championships. So if Newberry can come out and play this kind of defense like they did against University of Christian, they may give Hawthorne their first loss in over 2 years.
Oh yeah, and they need to put on, even if they don't win this game, it's not a district game. This is a great test for them because they have a tough schedule season. I mean, next week they go to Vanguard, which, for a 2A school to go up to a 4A school is pretty tough. And obviously a year ago, Newberry was a 1R school. They've moved up themselves. They play a lot of good 1R schools. They play Fort White. They play Williston. They play, I think they play Trinity Catholic. They play a lot of really strong schools this year. And then obviously, then their district, they have Bradford, who obviously was in a state title game last season. So they don't need this win, but if they could, if they can put on a good performance, that would be key because again, losses might come at other points. And I mean, we can obviously, the difficulty
we could speculate all day, right?
Right. And the difficulty of 2A obviously is insane.
Absolutely.
With Cocoa, with Berkeley, with Berkeley Prep. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that Newberry is going to win a state title, but the talent is there. The talent is there. And like you said, with how good that defensive line is, they really can make some noise. And I think, if they can beat Hawthorne, that could really, set a good trend. Now, if they can't, and what happens last season happens again, that'll be tough, because last season they recovered, they had a good season, but they had an inability to get above that next level. They lost twice to Hawthorne, they lost once to Williston. They couldn't beat the teams on the level above them. And if they can't beat Hawthorne this time, I think those questions can start to circulate given how tough their schedule is. But yeah, it's in my opinion, one of the best games that we have in North Central Florida this season.
And really quick though, before we wrap things up here, Columbia 13-0 against Sewanee. I mean, and then Bradford 13-7 against Baker County. So defensive slobber knockers for both teams. And Columbia, Columbia's got a tough challenge this week against former Madison County coach Mike Coe, who's the head coach at Coffee. They're going to play Coffee County this week there in Georgia for Columbia, and then Baker County's got Dunellen. So I mean, not Bradford. Bradford's got Dunellen. So sorry, excuse me. Let me correct that myself there. Yeah. Bradford's got Dunellen this week. I mean, for those two teams that, Columbia's obviously, had a lot of transfers that some of them ended up at Bradford, but Bradford, only winning, only scoring 13 points. Both of these teams have changed. Usually these teams are usually talked about teams, not just in our area, but statewide, around the state.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll start with Bradford first. A little bit of regression was expected. I mean, again, they had perhaps more roster turnover than anyone in the state. I mean, losing, Jason Clark, who went to Marshall, Khalil Cummings, who went to Memphis, just multiple on that defense, multiple, power forward commits. And they still have a lot of key pieces left, but some drop off was expected. And again, they are in a good spot to win their district, but, beyond that, being in the same region as Cocoa, being in the same region as, some other really tough teams, it's tough to envision them necessarily getting back to state like they have the past 2 seasons, to the state semifinal and the state final. But I think they'll be strong. They have another, again, really, really tough schedule this year. I mean, you mentioned Nellen this week. They host Mandarin in a few weeks, which, never mind the fact that Mandarin is a really
number one team right now in 6A right there.
Right. Never mind that. It's a 6A team playing a 2A team. So that's challenging in and of itself. But, that's the way Jamie Rogers likes it. He likes, the tough games. And then Columbia is the same way. I mean, you mentioned going to Coffee this week, defending state champions in Georgia, and they have a really tough schedule. They also have a really tough district. I mean, they got St. Augustine now in their district. So, it's going to be a challenge just to win that. And they have played Madison County, I think, next week. So they have really tough games as well. They're in a little bit different spot because their quarterback, Xavier Collins, did get injured, in practice, and he right before the kickoff classic. So he's going to be out for a few weeks. So right now they're just trying to string together the piece, string together the pieces. And I saw those two teams in the kickoff classic, and it was, they didn't score anything, but the offense moved well, and they have a strong defense. They have a really strong defense. So I think for them, Collins, their quarterback, expected to be back around week 4, week 5, somewhere in that range. They could be 2-2, 3-2, even 2-3 when he comes back. That would be key because with him and that defense, they can make some noise. And I mean, 4A is a little bit more, compared to what Bradford has to do, and 2A is a little bit more open. So, I think they could, I think they really, I think they could still be a playoff team, as they usually are. It's just, a 13-0 win in a game where they didn't score in the first half doesn't inspire much confidence. But I think they'll be fine. I think Bradford will be fine. I think they'll both be fine. I just think expectations from maybe where they were, for Bradford, where they were the last 2 years, Columbia, maybe where they've been in years past, maybe needs to be lowered a little bit, at least early in the season.
No, and of course, Columbia, their biggest challenge will be St. Augustine later in the season for district title, most likely. So we'll see what happens. And of course, Bradford, the biggest challenge will probably be Newberry for a district title. So we'll see what happens here and with all that. But Noah, I know you've been a busy man, and I appreciate you taking a few minutes of your time to talk to us here. And we'll have you back on later on during the season. Appreciate it, Noah.
Of course, Josh. Thanks for having me on.
All right, that's Noah Ram from the Gainesville Sun joining us here on the North Florida Blitz. Appreciate him as much as possible and all that and what he talked about with everything going on along here in the Gainesville area and outside in the rural areas too. So definitely appreciate Noah joining us here on the North Florida Blitz. All right, with that said, we've got to take our second water break, and then we'll have our fan question of the week and the pick six for week 2. Keep it locked here on the North Florida Blitz. We'll be right back right here, right after this. All right, welcome back here on the North Florida Blitz here. And make sure you're following us on YouTube at Florida HS Football. Hit that subscribe button. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. We are getting that close, very close. I mean, once we hit 1,000 subscribers, there's some stuff that YouTube will open up to us that we can do more with, and we will greatly appreciate that. And tell your friends, share the link at youtube.com, and I meant it's /at Florida HS Football, but I think it will actually be able to, if you forget the @ sign, I think it will go to the page too, but youtube.com /at Florida HS Football. That goes for this the other social media handles as well, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, Instagram at Florida HS Football, on X/Twitter. That is at FLA HS Football. So we appreciate everybody following along here on the North Florida Blitz and all the other shows that we do here on FloridaHSFootball.com. And there is a couple of questions that are sitting in the comment box. We've got a couple of them sitting here, and let's go about. Well, actually, let me see here. We got a thing here, and Jonathan Ferris asks, can Lincoln compete for a state title? The question mark is that you're in Class 5A, and that is a very crowded Class 5A. And honestly, I mean, we got Malin, we got St. Thomas Aquinas, we got Lakeland sitting there. I mean, could Lincoln compete? It all depends on with just how they play the schedule, and are they going to be prepared enough when it comes time for postseason? It's hard to say if Lincoln is going to be in that mix for a state title, given everything. If we were still under Metro Suburban, I think Lincoln's chances would be much higher of competing for a state title, but because we're back in the normal classification system what it used to be, I just don't know if the chances. I at best 5% chance, Jonathan, this year, just because of knowing what the other teams that we've got the other teams that Lincoln would have to go through this year in order to get a state championship. So hopefully that will answer the question there for you, Jonathan, about the chances and everything. Let me see what else we got here in terms of the comments or questions. But actually, I'm going to throw a comment up here while we got a moment here. And Carson D. Griffin says, let's chat about Mosley Dolphin football. Great team coming out of Bay County with games again coming up against Escambia and Niceville in September and October, respectively. Great offense and defense. Yes. What Tommy Joe Wooden does there at Mosley has been nothing short of been fabulous, and being able to put Mosley in a spot to compete for district championships and get a playoff berth. It's really huge. And it looks like the Dolphins are looking much better for 2024. So, and I know that it was disappointing, especially after winning that district championship last year and then getting handed a first round loss by Buchholz. I know that the goal is to only go up from there. And it looks like Mosley's already on the right foot for the 2024 season. So anyways, we are going to roll in here into the moment of the pick six. Yes, indeed, the pick six. And there's the music. And yes, I do have Marty's picks for this one too. So we will have Marty's picks put up. Okay, just because Marty's under the weather doesn't mean he doesn't have his picks. So we got his picks, and hopefully, again, Marty, we wish Marty the best, and hopefully he will be feeling better pretty quickly here. So we have him back next week for the show. All right. For last week, Marty was 4-2. I was 5-1. So hey, I will take that. Both of us will take that, and I will especially take it considering that considering with South Florida, that was bad. So hey, we'll give the round of applause there for that. All right, as we move along here, and now if I can stop it, there we go. You'll leave me more applause. All right, Marty's 7-5 on the season so far here in the North Florida Blitz picks. I'm 9-3, so 75% right on the games, but that only should surely improve here as we go through the season in terms of picking the games. And we'll be picking games all the way through the state championships this fall. All right, let's roll into our first game. Ponte Vedra at Barton Trail. Ponte Vedra had a little bit of a struggle last week against Nice, but Barton Trail. There's just been times where we've seen Ponte Vedra struggle one week, next week totally come in and dominate. However, Barton Trail had a big win over Riverview Sumner. And honestly, the Bears are looking just as good as any other time. Corey Johns going into his second year as the head coach. Definitely got the Bears on the right path. And I will say this, Marty was going with Bartram, and I am going with the Bears myself to pick up their second win of the season, and that puts Ponte Vedra behind the 8-ball at 0-2 if that happens. So we will see what happens on Friday night in that game between the two St. Johns County rivals. As we roll, game number 2, Dunellen at Bradford. Both teams 1-0 in this game, coming into this game, and honestly, playing at David Hurst Stadium, it's a tough environment there for any team coming from out of the region or out of the area, I should say. And honestly, Dunellen looked really good last week. Got a nice 21-14 victory over a good Florida High team. Of course, Bradford, that 13-7 slobber knocker defensive battle against Baker County. With that said, we're going to go with the home team. Both of us are going with the home team with the Tornadoes, and I think the Tornadoes, yes, you heard Noah talk about it. There was a little regression, but Bradford's still got a lot of left on the roster. There's some Division I prospects sitting there on the roster still for the Tornadoes, and honestly, we're going to take the home team, and we're going with the Tornadoes on this one for week number 2. Going over out on I-10, we got Escambia at Niceville, 1-0 for both teams. And honestly, as we know, the environment is hostile there at Eagle Stadium. And but it's Escambia County versus Okaloosa County here in this one. And honestly, Mike Bennett knows what to do when he takes his team on the road to these hostile environments. But Niceville, I will say this. Niceville's a whole different environment, and Eagle Stadium, again, we've talked about this before here on the show. It's usually 75 to 80, or maybe even up to 85 to 90% Eagles fan, 10% the other fans. And there's a couple of Niceville fans sitting here on this show watching, so I'm pretty sure they can confirm that percentage as 85 to 90%, usually Niceville fans, the other rest for the opponent. And but with that said, Marty is taking Niceville, and I'm going to stick with the home team in this one as well, with the Niceville Eagles picking up a win after, Niceville 35-28 over South Sumner. I know that was a close victory. I expect another close game here. Escambia is a good team, and you don't ever want to look ahead on your schedule. So I know the Eagles will definitely be focused here on this game come Friday night. All right. We're going to go back east on I-10 over towards the Big Bend area, and we got Lincoln 1-0 at Madison County, who's 1-0 after picking up that big win over DeLand last week. Lincoln got a win over Delaware Valley down in the game played down in the Orlando area. With that said, Trojans versus Cowboys. What more can you say? A good battle of two great Big Bend teams, but if we're gone to see a game at Boot Hill, worth the price of admission, small town environment, and they are electrifying. They even got their new school board up and running here, so that's great for the Cowboys. And Marty's going to take with the home team, and I'm going the same way. Madison County for the win this week. This game was at Gene Cox for Lincoln. I'm more likely maybe to take Lincoln in this situation, but Madison County is just a tough environment to play in, and having seen games there already before, I'm just I don't want to take too much of a roll on the dice there with that one, and that's why we're going to stick with the Cowboys for that game. All right, rolling into game number 5, we have Newberry at Hawthorne. Both teams 1-0 here, but as you heard Noah and I discussed here a little bit ago, Hawthorne, there's a little bit of regression on terms of the talent. Newberry, several Division I prospects, including Joel Carter. That defense for Newberry was lights out. Okay, everybody's like, well, Hawthorne, they haven't lost a game in the last 2 years, but you know what? You start off the season playing Anclote, and I'm just it just doesn't feel right to me when you go play one of the lowest rated teams in the entire state and who has struggled for years. And honestly, I still ask who put that game on the schedule, because honestly, it didn't. Those two teams, no bit of good. Didn't even do good for Hawthorne. Didn't even do good for Anclote. But with that said, Newberry beating University Christian. That's a good win. That's a good team. University Christian has been traditionally a very good team. So in this situation, for Marty, he was more leaning until somebody beats Hawthorne, he's going to continue to take Hawthorne. So that's his pick. That's how he reasoned it with me. For me, after what Newberry did last week and looking at these defensive stats here on the box score, this is the year that Newberry does it. For the first time in a long time, I'd say Newberry takes the win at Annie Mae Phillips Stadium. I know I am going to make some people on Hawthorne mad, but I really don't care right this second because I'm watching the spot of the football. Yes, I'm watching the spot of the football. So I'm going Newberry. Marty's going Hawthorne. We'll see if I eat some proverbial crow next week for that. Yes. All right, our last game of the week. For game number 6 on the pick 6, Bulls 0-1 at Trinity Christian 0-1. Trinity Christian squeaked by Ed White 21-18. Of course, we know we talked about that contention. And, we talked about with Bulls having that contentious game with Reigns and Reigns coming out on top. But, for me, I am just like, you know what, Trinity Christian, it's a small school. It's a good environment. But honestly, I think for me, I'm going the other way compared to what Marty has. Marty feels like Bulls will bounce back from that loss against Reigns, but I like Trinity Christian. It's a good battle. These teams used to not, there used to be a gap where they didn't play for a long time, but over the recent last few years, they have been putting each other on the schedule. And at one point, they were in the same district at one time. But for the Bulldogs and the Conquerors, this will be a good battle. This will be a test, and I feel like Trinity Christian wins there at home. And with that said, that is our pick 6 for the week 2 here of the 2024 season. This will be our 3rd week of total picks we have made here, starting with week 0 a couple weeks ago. And as we are going to do, we're going to roll it along here through the state championships, wherever they may be played at, outside the rural classification being at the villages come December. But we're going to roll into our final fan comments and final thoughts for the show here. And I guess somebody said, Trinity Christian in the Kickoff Classic was nobody. Well, I mean, okay. If that's what you say, Raymond, we'll go from there. I mean, I understand that, against Hawthorne, I get it that, that Hawthorne beat Trinity Christian, but I get that. But Trinity Christian also may be a little down this year. We'll see what happens, but we'll go from there. But Newberry's on a different Newberry looks much improved this year. So that's why I had to take Newberry into picks. That's why I feel like it's really, after seeing what they did to University Christian last week, I'm just kind of, I'm gonna go against the grain. It's not that I don't dislike Hawthorne. What Cornelius Ingram has done with that Hawthorne program over the last decade, I mean, it's very impressive. Don't get me wrong. Just don't get me wrong on that one. So yes. Yes, Warren Zock Williston also beat University Christian in the Kickoff Classic and then lost to Chiefland the next week. And yes, you're right. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Williston. Does Williston bounce back this week, or is Williston on a backwards trajectory? We will see what happens. Again, still early in the season. It's only week 2, so we will see how that rolls here and everything. But okay, Raymond, why I'm picking Trinity over Bowls is because it's at home for Trinity, and Trinity is a different environment than Bowls. If this game was at Bowls, I'd be taking Bowls 100%. So it's not. It's just the environment. It's home field advantage, and I feel like that's where the situation's going to be. And obviously, hey, for Trinity Christian getting a win over Ed White, hey, maybe that's enough to fire them up. We'll see what happens here. But hey, I will happily admit when I'm wrong, and I will happily admit when I'm right. So I will take it either way. All right, let's see. Let's a couple other comments here to see if there's anything. And Joe Zettel thinks Choctaw will shut Navarre out this week, and that might be that could be realistically possible. We'll see what happens. And of course, Chance Lucky was mentioning when I mentioned Frank Beasley earlier. Yeah, former Dunellen coach. Yes, Frank Beasley was the head coach at Dunellen for a while, and went to Trinity Catholic for a year. Was at the FHA for a while, and left the FHA to go home back to his alma mater at Choctaw. And I want to say this is year 4 for Coach Beasley now at Choctaw, I want to say. So yes, the Choctaw Indians looking mighty, mighty, mighty good. And Marcus Eden says, great show. Thanks for what you do. Love it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Marcus. And with that said, it's time to wrap things up here for the North Florida Blitz for week 2. Definitely appreciate everybody watching and joining us here on the North Florida Blitz. Remember, you can watch the North Florida Blitz. I should say the North Florida Blitz on the skip thing, and I meant to change that, but you can watch the North Florida Blitz here every week from 8:30 till 9:15 on Tuesday nights. And make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube at Florida HS Football. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and then, of course, follow us on all of our social media platforms at Florida HS Football, or on X, it's at FLA HS Football. All right, until next week, you've been watching the North Florida Blitz here on FloridaHSFootball.com. We'll see you next week.